Hey, what's up, everybody? Trey Griggs here with Beta Consulting Group, your sales and marketing strategist looking out for you. Be sure to check us out at betaconsultinggroup.com to learn more about how we can help you out. It's Friday, everybody. Finish strong Friday. Whatever you're doing today, make sure you finish with a fleur, with a lot of vigor today and get it done. Make sure you have a great day here on Friday. Of course, Friday means a couple of things for us. It means that we have the Word on the Street, episode 102 today. That's at noon Central, right here on LinkedIn Live, YouTube, or Twitter. So come back and check out our special guest, Jennifer Carpus-Romaine, the Executive Director of the TMSA. We're going to talk about the upcoming Level Up Conference in June, as well as how sales and marketing impact transportation. And of course, the street crew will be there. We'll talk about all kinds of great stuff. So make sure you join us at that time at noon Central for episode 102 of Word on the Street. Also, it means that we are 2 weeks away pretty much from our upcoming event, the Word on the Street Tough Mudder Charity Challenge, which is going to happen on April 30th right here in St. Louis, Missouri. We're going to go 9 miles and 30 obstacles, all in efforts to raise money for an organization called Battle Buddy 3-Gun. If you want to find more information about that, you can go to our website, betaconsultinggroup.com/events. And right there, you'll see everything about the weekend, about the Tough Mudder, and you can donate directly to the organization. It is a 501c3 nonprofit, so it is a tax-deductible donation. We are working to raise $100,000 to impact 250 wounded, paralyzed veterans with opportunities to come together as a community and do some really cool shooting adventures. We need everybody to help us out. So individuals, companies alike, it all adds up. $25, $50, $1,000 for your company, whatever. We're going to hit that goal and we're going to help them out. So make sure you go to the page, click donate now. And if you want to come in for the weekend or participate in a Tough Mudder, it's not too late to sign up for that. All right, everybody. That's enough for now. We got a great show today. This week's been phenomenal. This week's episodes, by the way, some of my favorites. Monday, we talked to Shannon Breen at Freightvana. That guy's just tremendous. Definitely go back and listen to that episode. A lot of good stuff there. On Tuesday, we talked to my friend Anthony Petit. Great stories about how he got into Truck Park and how he got into logistics. On Wednesday, we talked to my friend Natasha Hammock about sales and marketing teams working together and messaging and branding and content, all kinds of great stuff there. Yesterday, a phenomenal conversation with Cameron Robertson, CEO of 3PL Systems. That guy is such a great leader. Can learn so much from that episode. That was episode 33. So go back and check that out on demand on YouTube, Twitter, or on LinkedIn Live here. And then, of course, today we've got a transportation executive who's been doing it for a long time, a lot of wisdom, a lot of experience. And I'm so excited. This is actually our first conversation in person. We've communicated, digitally on LinkedIn and other places, but this is our first time to actually get to talk. So who knows what's going to happen, but please welcome to the show, transportation executive and my friend, Dave Abels. Dave, what's up, man? How are you?
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me on today.
Absolutely, man. Good to see you. And it's just great to connect with you and to hear a little about your experience. Tell everybody just a little bit about yourself, because there's things I need to learn about you as well. So do a quick intro and tell everybody who you are and what you're doing now.
Okay, so my name's Dave Abels. Obviously, I'm a transportation guru, let's call it. I've been in the industry for about 27 years. Interesting enough, I started out in 1995 at a small company, about 100 truck carrier in Des Moines, Iowa, and started out as a driver. So I actually got a CDL, went through truck driving school, did the whole thing, got on with the company, worked there for 5 years. The first 3 years, 2.5 years, drove over the road, then got an opportunity to come in the office. And so I came in the office, I'm going to say 97-ish, and then worked my way up to eventually being their operations manager. And then from that really launched my career. And I made a move to a 700 truck carrier, and then to a 1,500 truck carrier, and then to a 2,000 truck carrier. And ultimately, each time I'd advance myself and became the CEO of one of the largest companies in the country. And now I've left that role back in September, and I'm doing consulting for mid to small carriers. And I find it almost as enjoyable as anything I've ever done, because there's almost immediate gratification. And I think the thing that I like, Trey, about this industry the most is I'm able to teach people, and people want to learn. And it's a fun thing to teach because there's role playing involved. You love sales, right? So we role play. I mean, Dan Cushman, who is the president and CEO of PAM Transport, I was their vice president of operations for 6 years. Before Dan and I would go on to a sales call, we role played out the call almost every time. If this happens, do this, 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 and this. And by God, we got good at it. And I'd love to be able to teach people how to do those same things today.
Well, man, you're speaking my language. I'm a former educator myself, a former coach. I taught physics in high school for many years. And that's one thing I love about consulting as well. As you mentioned, there's the teaching aspect of it, there's some instant gratification. And if a company is wise enough to bring in outside counsel or outside consulting, it means that they're ready to make changes and they're willing to make changes most of the time. And so you do see the ability to change organizations and to help people grow. So you're definitely speaking my language. Now, are you still in Des Moines, or is that just where you were for the beginning?
No, I live in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So that's where
Okay, so
I'm
still
at
a
today.
Midwestern boy. I'm St. Louis. Des Moines is such a beautiful town. It's like one of the prettiest, cleanest towns that I've been in. It's a hidden gem in the Midwest. A lot of people don't know about it, but it's a great spot.
It really is, and my family's from there. My wife's family's from there. My children, one of my oldest son, who's 21, was born there. The others were born throughout my career in different locations throughout the country. But definitely Des Moines is a great place, much like St. Louis, Minneapolis, both on the top and bottom of one another there. And it's all kind of similar in nature, right?
Yeah, it's a great spot. It's a great place to live. It's pretty affordable. The weather's kind of, a bummer sometimes, but especially like right now, it's supposed to be, spring, and we're getting winter weather still here in the Midwest. So
Yeah.
not too
So if
excited
I
about that.
could, if I was able to grab my camera and show you outside, we probably got 2 inches last
Oh
night.
my
So
gosh, it's
my
crazy.
what was getting to be green grass is now covered completely in snow again.
That's right. Well, I guess you get a few more weeks where you don't have to mow anything, just a
Yep.
little bit
Right.
longer.
Right.
So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. So you started your career in the truck. Do you ever want to get back in a truck and do that again?
Well, I went on a trip while I was the CEO of the DART network in 2020 with the driver. And right now I'm engaged with the company. I'm sitting in really as their interim president and CEO, and I've been doing that for about the last 6 months in this consultative role. And last week, I actually dusted off the CDL. Not only did I ride with somebody, but I drove a couple different tractors. We were having an issue where one of the drivers had mentioned to me that she thought that her complaints were falling on deaf ears.
Hmm.
And it wasn't really that as much. Perception was that, but it was a brand new truck. So the shop kind of thought, hey, it's probably just some bugs. Let's let it work themselves out. I took her truck out and then took a spare truck out to match the two. By God, she was right. There was issues with the truck. We were able to get it back to the dealership. So that was fun, but probably not going to go back over the road again or anything like that anytime soon, other than a ride with the driver. There is an opportunity from where I'm consulting in Canada to come back to Minneapolis. And quite frankly, at times, it's almost as fast as some of the flights I've been on
That's true.
recently. So I might be better off riding with the driver.
Yeah, that's true. And I'm excited to do that. My dad was a local truck driver in Kansas City when I was growing up. He drove a 20-foot box truck. And so in the summers when I was in middle school, I would ride around with him. I got to experience that back when I was a kid. But I haven't been over the road, and I certainly haven't been with a big truck lately. And I'm very excited about that. So everybody's watching, keep your eyes on that, because I just partnered up with a company that helps carriers. I'm excited to announce that here real soon, probably next week. And I'm going to be have the opportunity to drive a truck and also in a parking lot, of course, and do an actual trip, because I'd love just to see what that life is like. I'd love to just go along and be along for the ride and document that. So I'm very, very excited about all that. It's going to be pretty exciting. That's for sure. So you're now helping with companies in terms of consulting on the carrier side of things, but you have a ton of experience as an executive. I want to dig into that experience just a little bit and ask you some questions about that time in your life from a leadership perspective. And I'd love to also hear your take on sales and marketing. So first of all, let's just talk about the leadership side of things. As you started driving a truck and started moving your ways through corporate America and advancing your career and moving to different companies, what are some of those critical lessons that you learned about leadership that you still keep with you today and that you teach other people when you're consulting with them?
I think the key is to always treat everyone with respect, right? So if you think about it, over a 27-year career, multiple different organizations of different size and stature, there's probably been some things that were brought to my attention that were less than important, right? You still need to address that thing that may be less than important in totality, but very important to an individual. And you have to address that with the same level of interest, the same level of compassion as you would something that might be a multi-million-dollar game changer for a company. And I think when you do that, that's when you earn the respect of your employees and your team members. And that ultimately is what's going to help you when it comes time to make that multi-million-dollar decision or that change that's going to propel your organization. Is having that buy-in from the ground level up will help that success come long term. And that's something I've always done well. Whether I'm in the boardroom with C-level executives or bankers, or I'm out talking to a driver or a fleet manager or a mechanic, I treat everybody with respect and on the same level.
I love that, because when you think about it, obviously some problems are more urgent than others, or at least need
Mhm.
more attention and more time. And it's easy to just not give your attention or not be present. I think that's the real thing you're saying is be present with
Right.
everybody wherever you are, no matter what it is. I think about that not only from a business perspective, but also as a parent, because how easy is it, especially now in the work from home environment where it's hard to turn work off, how easy is it for us to walk out and not be present with our spouse or not be present with our kids? Man, I struggle with that so much. And I love just hearing you say that and being reminded that even if it's something that seems really insignificant, like my daughter wants to show me a new bracelet that she made, I should give her the same attention that I'm giving anybody else in my day in that moment to be fully present. I love that. That is such a great lesson to learn.
You just brought up something too that has probably been a weakness in my game plan, right? And that's the family. So over the years of the progression I described to you, there's been times where I was a distant father or a distant husband. And that's something that I've really re-engaged. And I think COVID helped with that because I was able to see
Yeah.
that people could work from home. I was able to learn more about life in general and what it means to people, especially talking to truck drivers during COVID, because what happened to them was different than what would happen to you or I. We were home, and if someone we knew, or let's say your grandparent got COVID, maybe somebody even passed away, you were there to experience it. That driver might be 2,000 miles away from someone who just passed away and wasn't able to give his last respects. And those things I think are very important. And I probably at times didn't pay enough attention, Trey, to my family or my children. There were periods where I did, I get involved in youth sports and I coached basketball and I coached football. But then you get into that stage of 7th to 12th grade when you're no longer allowed to be the coach anymore. So I stepped back and probably didn't do so well. One of the things I've done great at since stepping away from the corporate world and doing the consulting is re-engaging with my family. So that's something I'm very proud of.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear. And I think in America in particular, we tend to put so much value on business and so much value on your career that the family oftentimes struggles, and we lose that. We risk losing that in particular. And I think that, it's nice to see. I mean, if there's any silver linings that come out of a pandemic, which the pandemic was terrible, especially for so many people that got sick or lost their lives. But if there's a silver lining that comes out of it, it's some of these things around perspective that
Right.
change a little bit, where people can go, you know what? Yeah, this business is important. And yes, I need to keep working hard. And yes, I need to keep producing and all those things. But I don't want to do it to the detriment of my family anymore. And I think that's the shift we're seeing in employees. And I think companies are going to have to reconcile with that they can't really ask as much of their employees, or at least to take as much of their life or their time, their emotion or their stress, or to be more considerate about their employees and how, when they go home, are they ready to be present with their family? Or are they just going to blow off steam because they're so mad at work or so stressed out or so frustrated? How can an employer really just ensure that an employee has a better quality of life at home, and is going to be a better employee, I think, when they get to work? These are tough questions, I think, that companies are not having to answer.
And I think your transportation logistics companies, it's almost a little more difficult than it is in a 5-day world, because we live in a 7-day world in trucking and logistics, right?
Right,
So
right. It never
people
ends.
typically, in my entire career, even growing up as a dispatcher or a fleet manager and all these different roles, there was a Saturday rotation. So your 5-day job was a 6-day job, at least 3 or 4 weeks per month. In many companies, it's every other week or every weekend. So I think we've really got to start to look at how do we structure our staff so that they get that time with their family, because ultimately that's what's going to make them a long-term viable employee for us too, right? Is that work-life balance that we forgot about for so many years, right?
That's right. And you think about it, I mean, a lot of times it's so easy just to focus on the here and now. But when you think about it, at the end of your life, whenever that is, however many years that we get, at the end of our lives, our employer is not going to be there. They're not going to be there when we're on our deathbed, or most likely at our funeral. They're probably not going to be there.
No.
They might have already passed themselves. Who knows? But
Right.
They're not going to be there. The people that are going to be there will be our spouse, hopefully,
Mhm.
our children, our grandchildren. And that's the legacy that we're building. And I just love your perspective on that, you went through it and maybe you didn't do so well, and you're
Right.
acknowledging that and you're trying
I
to
was bad.
fix that. And I think that's good that we encourage that among especially young CEOs that feel like maybe they've got to put in 70, 80, 90 hours a week. And for what? It's to the detriment of the people that they're actually doing all this work for. Or maybe they're not. Maybe they're just so prideful they're not doing it for them, they're doing it for themselves. But I think it's critical to keep that aspect in mind, that there's people that are expecting our time and our attention, our focus, and that's what really matters at the end of the day and at the end of our life.
And you brought up another good point too. So these younger CEOs, and I was one of those at one point, and I'm only 52 today, but at any rate, you come in and you want to make an impact, right? And I remember saying to different fleet managers or different people that I would see stay late, others go home on time every day. And I would say to them, I want to design your job so that this isn't a requirement, so that you don't have to stay late. I want to understand why. So again, I'm engaged with my people. I'm down at the floor level. I'm talking to them. I see certain people there at night. What are you still doing here? Help me understand that. But at the same time, I never thought about it for myself, right? So I want to design this role for my employees
Right,
and for my team members, so they come in and they go home and they don't have to think about work at night. But I could never get it out of the back of my mind. So it didn't matter where we at. I vividly remember being at Disneyland with my children on conference calls in the line, right? I mean, you've got to take a step away from that. And I think as I look back on it, and one of the things that's really come to fruition for me with consulting is, if you've got to design that type of system where you have to be there 80, 90 hours a week, and you can't be in a line at Disney World, and you have to be on a conference call, you've probably done something wrong in your design, right? So your system is not necessarily flowing properly if it requires you to be there or be engaged that much, right?
Well, and here's the balance, and then I'm finding this as a new business owner as well. Here's the balance: is that you want to be the hardest working person in your organization, because you want to set the standard for working hard. But at the same time, you also need to set the standard that being present at home, or making sure that you go to your kid's baseball game, or whatever it might be, and not missing a concert or whatever, that's also important as well. In fact, Greg Roberts, who just jumped into the comments here, he does this really well. He talks about how he takes an hour lunch every day, and he leaves his office because what it does is it tells his people they should take some time away. They should step away and have lunch and reset and recalibrate. He says, if I don't take that time at lunch, I'm subliminally telling them that they shouldn't either. And so as a leader, you have to be, you want to set the example as being the hardest worker, but then you also need to set the example of turning it off or valuing what matters most. And that means that maybe at 3:00 you need to leave because your kid is doing something they're only going to do once, and you don't want to miss it, and that's more important than what's getting covered. Just plan ahead, get somebody to help you out and cover, and go do that thing with your kid. And if we value that as leaders, our people will value that more. And I think ultimately they're going to be more appreciative. They're going to be better employees. They're going to work harder. They're going to be more happy. So it's a delicate balance to walk. I don't think I'm doing it well yet, but hopefully I learn well.
You've got time to fix it. So do it a little bit quicker than I did, right?
Yeah.
Luckily, my children are still in high school. 2 of the 3 are. So I've been able to re-engage there and spent some time with them recently, and talk, right? Explain to them. And I explained to them some of the flaws that I've had throughout my career and why I thought what I was doing was right. So it goes back to that same discussion you might have with your employee. I always talk about the entire scenario to include what was right and what was wrong.
I love that. I think that's really great. And these are just great lessons, especially for new CEOs, to think about, like, okay, let's just think 10 years down the road, what really is going to matter? What's really going to matter? When my kid's 14, are they going to know me as the dad who's not here? Or are they going to know me as the dad who, even though he works hard, has a ton of responsibility, always made the time for me? And I think that's going to last. That's going to be a legacy that's going to last a long time. And that's what people probably want more than they know, but they don't tend to think ahead, like, okay, they think I got time, I'll do it later. No, let's start that right now. Let's start that principle right now and make that how it is. All right. So Dave, I want to transition real quick. So leadership stuff is awesome, but man, we could talk about that all day. I'd like to dig in just a little bit from your perspective as a CEO, as a transportation executive for many years, especially in logistics and transportation. How did you view marketing in terms of the value it brought to your organization, and sales? Because here's my premise, and then tell me if I'm wrong and correct everything there. My premise is I don't feel like transportation companies value marketing like maybe other industries might value marketing. I feel like it's almost kind of in the back burner. And a lot of times the sales leader is also in charge of whatever marketing that they're doing. And most marketing organizations within transportation might only have one person. They're like a solo marketing team. So talk a little bit about how you value marketing and transportation, and where you think companies are maybe missing the mark, or how they should invest more in that. Just go ahead and talk about that a little bit.
Okay, so one thing I think when it comes to transportation and logistics companies is, and you see a lot right now, especially on LinkedIn and Freight Waves, about the cycles of freight, right? So sales and marketing so follows that freight flow, right? So it's like this. We don't really just do this in sales and marketing. We don't put together a marketing program that's 365 days a year. We don't even put together sales campaigns that are 365 days a year or multi-year, even better. We put together sales campaigns and marketing campaigns that are around the market condition this week, this month, this quarter, and so goes the changes, right? We may think, all right, we got to get new customers right now. Let's make phone calls. Let's get a call list. Let's work on a new marketing campaign. And then guy lands a big one, so his trucks are full and he's got freight, so he stops. All right, let's throw away the marketing campaign. Let's quit making phone calls. And then all of a sudden, a lane expires or goes away, or for whatever reason, a customer changes direction. And now he's got capacity, but he's got no pipeline build up. He's got no marketing presence build up because he changed it all again. So I think, and this has always been a frustration of mine, is we've got to understand what to talk about with customers when it's not obvious. I'm not calling you to get a load today, right? I already got a load on my truck, but I know at some point during the next 2 to 6 months, I'm going to need a load. So what I need to do, Trey, is I need to engage with you as a potential customer and get to know you a little bit, right? And that's hard to do because sometimes that customer is very busy and doesn't have the time it takes to get to know somebody. You've got to figure out how to bridge that gap. Put together your call list to talk about industry topics.
Or because there's not a burning need, you don't feel the priority, right? Like you're like, well, we don't have the need, so I'm not doing it. I think it's really important for all companies, but especially transportation logistic companies, to understand that marketing is the long game strategy. It's building your brand so that people start to come to you, so that people trust you, so that people know who you are, so that when you are ready to take them on or when they're ready to buy, it's not a scramble. Like it becomes a more consistent or predictive flow. But you're building your brand, you're building your awareness, you're building your messaging and your culture, your external identity to customers of who you are. And it's almost like recruiting. Like I heard Brent Orsuga recently, my good friend, say this, like you need to be recruiting all the time because you don't know when you have that need. You don't know when somebody's going to say, hey, I'm out, I'm done, or, hey, I'm pregnant. I don't want to work when I have my kid, or just whatever the situation might be. Hey, I'm moving to go be with my parents and help take care of them a little bit. All those things kind of pop up sometimes, and you don't always know when they're going to happen. And so from a recruiting standpoint, from an HR standpoint, that needs to be ongoing. I would say the same thing from a marketing perspective. It should be an ongoing thing to at least get your name out there. And then occasionally you could do some of those special campaigns like you talked about when you see the market shift or you see an opportunity for a new vertical or things like that. That's kind of my take on it. I don't feel like most transportation executives see it that way. What do you think?
No, I think they see it through, like I described, is what do we need right now, or what do we need for the next quarter to make our number look good? And I would tell you, I probably led sales a little bit differently. And some of the people that thrived in that environment are still out there today. Josh Cushman is a great example of that. Doesn't matter if we need freight or not, that guy's going to make 50 phone calls a day and he's going to talk to 50 people about something, right? And he's building
his pipeline probably looks real good too, I bet.
Oh yeah, it does. And then trucking companies that also have the logistics arm, that's a great thing too, right? Because then it doesn't matter what I need for that day for that truck. I can throw it over to my logistics arm. But it goes back to that relationship building thing. I want to be the one that customer knows, hey man, call Dave Abels, because no matter what, they're going to be able to provide us some form of a solution, whether it be multimodal, whether it be truck, or whether it be logistics. And that came from those discussions we had. It wasn't, I just called you every time I need one load, right? You got to stop. And I think that's the thing. And with the marketing campaign, we have internal customers. This is, again, a thing that COVID's really brought up more so than in the past. You now have an internal customer too, and that's your team member who you mentioned might be having a baby and might decide not to come back to work, or might decide to move back home to take care of his parents and things like that. You've got to create an internal marketing campaign that helps that person feel a part of it. You started out years ago when social media first came out. We'll post your birthday. We'll post a happy anniversary. We've got to do more than that, right? We got to talk about, you mentioned some charitable things that you're doing right now with your organization. Let's start to put a campaign together that talks about who we are, the charities we support, and what we do for our employees long term, not just a birthday post every time you think about it. And the problem with the birthday post is, Trey, they didn't even do it consistently for 12 months. So some people's birthdays got overlooked, right? And that person's now offended. So I think consistency in brand recognition, and there's some good companies out there that can help with that, or bring on your own social media person, because the one thing I would say about having somebody on your own team, they'll be able to spend time with you to get to know who you are and what your pain points are and what you need to personify.
Yeah, no, that's so critical. And I think you're right. Like the consistency happens and you get the benefit from that because people start to go, oh, I know who Dave is. Like, I know who he is. And when that need arises, they're not scrambling to find somebody. You're the first person that pops in their mind.
Right.
I think that's the benefit of marketing that a lot of companies miss out, is that brand awareness. When people do have a need, you want them to think of you when it matches up with what their need is. You want to be the first person on their mind, not the person they find in a Google search. Although Google search is important, it'd be great if you had already built that brand, that identity, that awareness, and that relationship ahead of time. And then it just makes it so much easier when they are ready. And it makes it easier for your sales team too. Think about this. As a CEO, if people know you and trust you, then what happens when your sales guy calls them? They're going to recognize that name and go, oh, yeah, I know Dave. Okay, cool, I'll take this call. They're much more likely to take a phone call from something familiar than from something unfamiliar.
And then you got to know when to bring that person in. So as I'm the bench player, as the CEO, right now, my guy has banged out the calls. He's got us into the meeting. You got to know when to bring the right people into that mix. And I think something Dan Cushman, who was, again, the CEO at PAM, mentioned to me one time, and I wasn't a sales guy there. I was a vice president of operations and marketing, which was really customer service there. And he said, you're probably the best sales guy I have. And part of that was I wasn't necessarily better than the sales people were, but I understood our business and I understood what we could and couldn't do for you. And you mentioned Google search, or whether you're using Zoom info or whatever today and you're making cold calls. The one thing I would tell an up and coming salesperson is do a little research, man. So I get it. Maybe somebody has a quota and you got to bang out 60 phone calls a day. I'd rather bang out 40 phone calls or 35 phone calls and have good data, so that when Trey actually picks up the phone, I know a little bit about your organization. I know a little bit about what you do, and you can then just fill in the gaps. I don't know how many times people call me as an executive, typically like an executive recruiter, and they're trying to throw a guy out there or a gal out there for me to hire. It doesn't even fit into what I'm doing at all, right? So I'm going to discount that phone call. But if you really knew, and you knew what we need, and you knew a little bit about our company, and you could do this as a recruiter too. Search our job postings, find out what it is we're looking for, bring that candidate. Don't bring me a safety person when I'm looking for a salesperson. So I think that research on the front end will pay dividends. And I get it. Cold calling is difficult. And Chris Jolly would tell you it's something that people feel uncomfortable doing. After 27 years, if I was to make a bunch of cold calls today, I'd probably still feel a little angst in the back of my mind. But I'm going to tell you right now, when I get somebody on the phone, I know what to say and I know what to do.
Yeah. And I love that perspective so much about, we have so much information at our fingertips that we can use. I mean, 30, 40 years ago, yeah, you just make a bunch of calls because you don't know who you're calling. You don't really,
Right.
I mean, how are you going to find out anything about them anyways? But now with LinkedIn and websites, you can learn so much about a company and about a person, about what they like, maybe their charitable volunteer work on LinkedIn, where they went to college. You can find out a lot about a person and make that call much more enjoyable. And I agree. I'd rather have 40 really good calls a day that you've done your research and you can actually provide value as soon as they pick up, as opposed to 60 or 70 where you don't know anything about the person when you're making the call. I think it's just smart sales to do that. And sales leaders would be smart to say, I tell people this all the time, if your sales team is not on LinkedIn, you are missing out big time, because all the information about your customers and your prospects that you're trying to get a hold of is right there. You just have to take a little time to do the research and make that a part of your cadence. And then those 60 calls comes down to 40, but those 40 calls are more meaningful and more impactful on the whole. And I love that you have that perspective as a leader and that you're teaching that as well.
Yeah, I think the thing that's really cool about LinkedIn too is because there's data out there now too. So your freight waves data is out there. So there's always something new every day that I see on there that I could talk to somebody about.
Right.
It's relevant to what we're doing today. And then it also makes you kind of seem like you're a connected guy and you know what you're doing, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, I love it. Dave, listen, man, we're at 30 minutes. This thing just flies by every day, just absolutely flies by. So this has been really great. Thank you so much for being on the show. I do hope you'll come back and visit us soon, man. This is awesome.
Sure, love it. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, that'd be great. So let me talk a little bit about some things coming up. Dave, you can stay for a minute real quick because you want to hear this. So it is Friday. So don't forget on Monday, 6 a.m. Central, we've got Iron Minds with my good friend Hayden Allred and myself. We're going to be working out and talking about getting your mind right for the week. It's a lot of fun. You can do a little in-home workout if you want, or throw us on your headset when you're at the gym. We'll have a lot of fun doing that. And make sure you come back on Monday for Standing Out episode 35. We've got a really great episode with my good friend Tyler Robinson, CEO of Diesel Laptops. This guy's a phenomenal leader. Dave, you know that guy.
Yep, good guy.
It's going to be awesome to have him on the show and talk about what he's doing over there. So we got a lot of things coming up. But until then, have a great weekend, everybody. Come back at noon for Word on the Street, episode 102. It's going to be awesome. And make sure you finish strong today. And come back every day, 10:30 a.m. Central, for another episode of Standing Out, daily podcast about sales, marketing, and leadership. We'll see you guys real soon. Take care.
Take care, everybody.